Are we live?
We are live.
So everybody can see us right now and
Hi,
hear us.
everybody.
Hi. If you have found us, then thank goodness, because you've been keeping up with things to know where to go, what to click on, and whatever. I'm even looking at YouTube right now. I don't even see us, but maybe, oh wait, it's coming in now. Oh my gosh.
Is it there?
It's there. I see myself freaking out. That's pretty impressive.
Oh, that's marvelous. My hour of technical difficulties has paid off. Yes. Yes.
Yes. So here we are. It's all working. And first, let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. I'm Bruce Gibson. I'm just one of the hosts that are going to be here doing this live reaction show to Star Trek Discovery. And Brandi, introduce yourself to our fans out there.
Well, hi, I am Brandi Jackola. I am the other regular host for this live reaction show. And so you'll have to look at this mug for every episode of that. I don't know whether to congratulate you or apologize. And then we also have with us a special guest host, Patrick. Would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
Yes, hi, I'm Patrick Devlin. I've guested on shows like Warp 5 and Earl Grey. I'm just glad to contribute to this podcast as well.
Fantastic. We're happy to have you here. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us.
Yes, and we like everybody else to join us also, because even though you're not on the show, this is going to be an interactive show. Yes, we are testing this out. This is the first time really we're doing this. We kind of trialed it when we talked about the Orville on the Edge, but this time we want to try to interact with you guys and hear what your comments are, if you have any questions. And one way to do that is to tweet to Trek FM. Now, if the show's not live and you're listening to this later, that's not going to work. You have to be here live with us. So please feel free to go to Trek FM, to tweet to @Trek FM is what I meant to say. And then you can send us your comments and questions. And I'm not going to say we're going to get to all of them, but we will try to get to some of them. But of course, we're going to start the discussion about episodes 1 and 2 that premiered in the United States and in Canada last night and everywhere else today. So everybody should, for the most part, most people should have had a chance to check out the first 2 episodes. So I think we'll just start it off by first, let's ask Brandi, what did you think?
What did I think? Well, despite the fact that CBS All Access seemed ill-prepared for millions of people watching Star Trek Discovery at the same time, which they had much time to prepare for, my stream kept stopping, freezing, and skipping throughout both episodes. I was not amused, but I continued to soldier through, and what parts didn't skip and didn't freeze, I loved it. I can't wait for more. I'm so excited about this series, and I can't wait to just dissect every inch of it.
Well, that's interesting. So you were watching it during the prime time of the premiere, and I didn't have any problems on CBS All Access. It streamed beautifully for me. So maybe it was just your part. What part of the country are you in?
I'm in Utah.
That's right. So you're in Utah. So that's, yeah, I don't know. Patrick, what about you? How did you watch Discovery, and then what were your initial thoughts when you watched it?
Unfortunately for me, I wasn't able to watch it as it was airing. I ended up having to watch later, so I didn't have any lag issues at all, but I didn't expect any because everyone was watching it, an hour and a half before me. Unfortunately, I just had to stay off Facebook for an hour and a half then because everyone was throwing up spoilers, which was driving me insane. But as far as the show goes, I loved every minute of it. I thought it was great. The fact that they brought up a lot of cultural issues in the first episode, I think was great and hit it off well.
Fantastic.
Great.
And
Yeah.
Bruce?
What did I think? Do you really want to know what I thought?
Yes,
Oh my
since
gosh.
this is your second time seeing the episodes.
Well, yes, it is. So I was at the world premiere in Hollywood on Tuesday and got to see it. And those who are watching live on YouTube, or I guess on the recording of YouTube, there's my ticket. There it is. So
yeah,
I
rub
was
it
able,
in, rub it in.
That's just proof that I was there. And I've got a whole long story behind it that I'm not going to give you, but I did sit, my assigned seat was in the front row center. So I had like the perfect scene. As a matter of fact, Scott Mance from Access Hollywood comes running down from wherever he was saying and starts pointing at me. He's like, "What did you do? How did you get this scene? This is the best scene in the house." He was just ribbing me on that whole thing. So it was pretty fun. So yeah, I saw it that night, which is incredible because the cast and previous casts and executives and producers are there. But then I watched it, of course, Sunday night, and I watched it again today. So I've seen it 3 times. So if I don't know anything about this show, then something's wrong with me. But I loved it. I will say that. I did love it.
That is good. And I can also confirm that my husband, who watched it with me, loved it as well. He was less patient about the freezing and skipping, but, you know, he soldiered through with me, but he's excited for more as well.
Great. Okay, so it starts off, and I don't know if we'll do a whole play-by-play, but let's just start with the very beginning. We start off with the Klingons, and they're speaking in Klingon, and we have subtitles. And of course, every time we have different scenes with the Klingons, for the most part, we're hearing them speak in that language. So how did you feel about that? Did it work for you to have the subtitles and them speaking in Klingonese the whole time, or would you prefer that it got translated verbally into English?
Well, my personal opinion is I have watched a lot of foreign films and I am used to reading subtitles. So subtitles never bother me. And I would always rather hear something in the original language. Now, granted, this is Star Trek and Klingon is a created language, but it is a fully functioning language now. There are people who teach it. There are people who have done the translation for these episodes. And I actually had zero problem with them speaking Klingon. I found that actually to be a lot more realistic. And I think the subtitles were not originally supposed to be all in caps. And that's a change that they made late in the game. But it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to me. I am fine with subtitles. I love listening to Klingon. Bring it. Bring it. Give me more.
Kupla. Great. Patrick, in your best Klingon, what did you think?
Oh, I don't have a good Klingon.
Okay.
I'm more of an Enterprise fan. No, but I enjoyed hearing them speak their own language. My only problem was the fact that it was the way they put the type up, and sometimes the areas they put it on the screen made it a little harder to see than it should have been. But other than that, I thought it was more authentic, felt more real to hear them speak that way.
I agree for the most part. There were certain scenes where the bottom of the screen there's some light or something very bright that sometimes it was a little hard to read at times. There's just very few times where that the graphics didn't show up as well. The type didn't show up. But I was okay with it except for the first real long scene that we had in episode 2. It goes on for a while when he's talking about the Vulcans and the Endurians and other. I mean, it just goes on for a while, and hearing this isn't real Klingon I'm doing, it's my fake Klingon, but it started to get to me after a while. I'm like, okay, I'm getting exhausted kind of hearing this for that long. Outside of that, though, I was cool with it. I do like the fact that we hear more of it. It makes them sound a little more interesting and a little more alien to me. So.
Agreed.
So, and are we okay with the look of the Klingons?
Well, somebody put it to someone who is criticizing the look of the Klingons this way. In the human race, you have someone like Shaquille O'Neal, and you have someone like Vern Troyer. And though they are both members of the human race, their appearances are drastically different. So it stands to reason that there are going to be Klingons who look different than what we have seen before. There are 24 houses. It is hubris to think that we've seen representatives of all of those houses yet.
Do you think we'll see Klingons that we've seen before in the Next Generation and even TOS without even the ridges? Do you think we'll see that eventually?
I personally am not sure. My husband said that he would like to see that he thinks it would be a really great idea if they did incorporate all the different incarnations of the Klingons in an episode or episodes of this series. I have no idea what's coming as far as that's concerned, but I have no problem with the look of the Klingons that we were introduced to in this particular couple of episodes.
Yeah, same here. And as a matter of fact, I expect that we will see more familiar looking Klingons as we go along in the different houses. And again, I don't know anything, but I'm expecting it, which is a bad thing to do, because if we don't get it, I'll be disappointed. But maybe we'll cover that in a novel or something someday. Patrick, what are your thoughts about the look of these Klingons and how they differ from what we've seen before?
I really enjoyed their look. I think it gives them much more of a warrior caste system feel than, say, the original series, and TNG kind of felt that way. But I think they changed them to where they look kind of more like samurais before, and now they really don't. They, in fact, like I'm jumping ahead a little, but when they went to bury one of their own, the light bearer, the light bringer, that felt more Egyptian to me than say samurai did.
Yes, the torchbearer. Yeah, exactly.
Torchbearer, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So, speaking of Klingons, is there anything about the Klingons that doesn't feel right to you, or do we all feel pretty good about that?
I like them. I don't think anything feels wrong. We've already seen them change looks once in Star Trek, so that doesn't really bother me so much. And they kind of grasp that feel of the warrior race who's trying to recapture that part of their culture.
Yeah, I didn't feel there was anything wrong there either. And the Klingons have changed appearance more than once. I mean, Worf in Star Trek Next Generation Season 1 and Worf in Star Trek Next Generation Season 7 look very different. Start comparing pictures and look at all that. Yeah, he looks different just from that beginning to that end. And so I don't really have a problem with different looking Klingons. They're still Klingons to me. And they not only have this whole warrior mentality, but it's also like a religion. It's sort of like a religious aspect to this crusade that T'Kuvma is trying to begin. Yeah, I remember the name T'Kuvma. You want me to spell it?
I'm very impressed. I'm very impressed.
I'm so proud of me.
Okay, well, you are so good with names. So we have Captain Georgiou and we have Lieutenant Commander Berman, and we're down on this planet. See, I don't remember the name of the planet, but they're on this planet where it's they're in a drought for the next 89 years, and so they're going to this well to shoot down this laser down at the bottom of the well to get the water to come up. And so at this point, when we're first introduced to our main characters in these first two episodes, this is our first introduction to Starfleet characters within this new Star Trek series. And I guess my initial thought was, is this feeling like Star Trek? And the fact that they're on this relief mission to help another species, another race, and kind of hide themselves from them so they don't quite break the Prime Directive, but then yet in a way, I guess they kind of did. I mean, at this point, I was thinking, yeah, okay, this feels like Star Trek. So what are your thoughts, Patrick, of this first scene of these two characters together, and even how they get the Shinju to find them?
I think it was great. I think when they were talking about not breaking General Order 1, meanwhile, a second earlier, you see one of the race standing over the egg sacs looking down. So they clearly were seen by the race on that planet. And then we see the race, a couple of beings from that race actually come out as the Shinjo comes to get them. I think it was really awesome that she just made her walk around until she did a big giant Starfleet logo. Mm-hmm. And Lieutenant Commander had no idea what they were walking for. She thought they were just walking in the circle.
Right. Yeah. Captain Georgia is like, you're going to have to trust me this time. And I love how she asked Berman, if you were trapped here for 89 years, what would you do? And she's like, well, I would try to fit in within, the culture and the society and da, 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 da. And she's like, what would you, Captain? She's like, I would escape. I love that. I love that. Brandi, what'd you think?
I liked it. It's a different way to introduce characters, and I think that just setting us down in the middle of something that is a part of their mission is actually fine, because the first rule of storytelling is start the story as late as possible and get out of it as early as possible. You don't want any extraneous beginnings or endings, which is why I don't like prequels for the most part. However, in the Star Trek universe, prequels don't bother me because I'll say it right now in front of everybody. I love Enterprise, and anyone who wants to fight me on that is welcome to do so. But just remember, opinions are just that. They're opinions. They're neither right nor wrong. But I loved seeing them in this different setting away from their shipmates and how they interact with each other, showing us a bit of their relationship before we see how they fit into the rest of the crew on the Shinzo.
Yeah, I agree. And I love Enterprise also.
Oh, yay.
No worries there. Well, yeah, again, I don't want to go through play-by-play of every scene. I really want to start getting into this, but into the whole show and the whole feelings of everything and what works and what doesn't work. The first thing I want to ask before we get into that, though, because we are still at the beginning of the show, is the opening sequence and the music. So this is a little different. There's some callbacks to the original series, and I guess in a sense to the Next Generation. And then there's the whole graphic aspect of it with the 1,000,001 executive producer names that are up there. So what are your thoughts about the opening sequence and music?
Why don't you go first there, Patrick?
To be honest, that's the one thing about the show I didn't like. I don't like I like the callbacks to with the actual notes that they're using, but I don't know. It wasn't that great, the opening sequence to me.
Okay. I didn't really have a problem with it. I liked the visuals of it. The music wasn't especially memorable yet, except when they're doing the duh, the dun da da, the Star Trek, that. But as far as the visuals during the opening credits, main titles, however you want to call them, I found them to be at the same time futuristic and sort of 60s retro, which I actually found that to be a nice mix, and I found them visually interesting.
Yeah, I thought the opening sequence reminded me a lot of sequences that we're seeing on other shows, especially on premium services like your Game of Thrones or whatever.
Westworld.
Yeah, exactly. Those same types of openings and the theme of the music. And I'd heard the music before the series premiered. And it's not that I don't like the music, and I think it works really well with the graphics of the opening sequence. I just wish it had more of a melody instead of like, I mean, it's just like, if I hum any other of the songs, the opening credits of the other music, or even sing Enterprise, you know what I'm doing. That one I don't think is going to be as recognizable if I were to do that. And no, I'm not going to do it on this show. I just gave you a little preview there. I'm not going to do much anything. Nope. Brandi, no, I'm not.
Oh,
not serenading you tonight. No.
Bummer.
But no, when I was at the screening in Hollywood on Tuesday, I heard people around me making comments during the sequence of how well the graphics were done. I mean, there was a lot of murmuring of like, oh, that's really nice. Ooh, I like how they did that. So that was the only time during the whole screening I actually heard people talking. So they seemed to be impressed with that, at least on their end. So, okay, so let's go to Twitter. We do have a comment or question here from Jonathan Hill. He's at Just a Disney Geek. And he says, how does everyone feel about the fact that we don't even see the USS Discovery at any point in the 2-part premiere? Brandi, are you okay with the fact that we've got to see the Shenzhou, but we didn't get to see Discovery?
Actually, that didn't really bother me because what they were doing was setting the stage and showing us a lot of character information. I think that was the primary function of these first 2 episodes, is to say, okay, here are these characters. Here is what Michael's about. Here's what Saru is about. Here are these people, and we're going to establish them in a different situation so that when we see Discovery and we see them integrate into that new situation, we already know what they're about. And so I honestly don't have a problem with that. It just makes the excitement that much more for when we do see Discovery, which I'm hoping is episode 3. Please let it be episode 3.
I would think so, right, Patrick?
I mean, I would hope so. It comes out in episode 3, but no, I kind of feel the same way as Brandi. It didn't bother me at all that we didn't see the Discovery. I know that it's kind of been a sticking point for a bunch of people, but the stories aren't told the way they used to be. So 10 years ago, 15 years ago, yeah, it would have bothered me a lot, but that's not the way TV is anymore. Now everything's congested and jammed into a 10 to 15 episode season. So you have more time to flesh out the beginning, but you then have to rush through the end. So it doesn't really bother me so much. I just want to see the character development not take a step back, which I feel this is how they were going to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't have an issue with that either. I think one reason is because I was expecting not to see Discovery for a while anyway. So I wasn't, just because of some of the previews and things that we've seen. And it's like you said, Patrick, I mean, it's really about the character's journey. To me, it's not as much about the ship. But again, knowing that that's probably going to come later, I was okay with it. If anything, it makes me even more excited because I feel like, wow, we got the premiere of the episode and we still haven't seen the ship. Like there's something more to look forward to. And I'm really excited, like you, Brandi. Like I'm hoping we see an episode 3. If not, that's okay. But I don't want to have to wait till episode 5 or 6 either. It's got to come soon. I don't want to wait too long for this to happen. So, but we have Thro's pen on and even though we didn't see Discovery in this episode yet, he does say that Discovery is a horribly fugly design and it just doesn't grow on you. And he comments about Discovery's design, and yet not even just that, but the Shinjo and what the design of that ship and the other Starfleet ships that we've seen. Does it fit well enough in canon in this time period, or is it too far maybe on the Enterprise side or too futuristic when you compare it to the Enterprise 1701? Patrick, what do you think about that?
I'm actually sorry. My whole computer just froze up for a second. I missed the question.
Oh, okay. Well, it's just asking about how the ships, Discovery, the Shenzhou, all the other Starfleet ships, do they work for you in this time period? Do they feel right, or are they too futuristic looking?
I'm fine with them. I mean, I guess Shinju is supposed to be actually a little older, so maybe it should bother me, but it really doesn't. And we haven't really seen the new ships, so we can't really tell what the new ships look like for the time period until we see them more in action and stuff.
What about you, Brandi? What do you think?
It didn't bother me either, because it actually made me think of the NX-01. And so it's futuristic, but more futuristic than the ship in the TV series Enterprise was, but in my mind, not as futuristic and clean lines and just immaculate like the NC-1701D. So NCC, excuse me. So I didn't really have a problem with the designs of the ship. I rarely do have problems with designs of ships, because if it's a spaceship, I'm pretty much going to like it for most intents and purposes. But I didn't feel it was out of place.
See, this is where it's going to get tricky, because you're trying to make a show in 2017 that relates to a show that was done in the late 1960s. And I do really love the design of these ships. I love the bridge. And at some point, I have to think that we're going to see a Constitution class ship at some point in the series, whether it's the Enterprise or another vessel. But that Constitution class ship can't look exactly like it did in the 60s. Maybe it can from the original series. Maybe it would work. But I'm very curious if they'll take a little bit of creative license where it looks like the one from the original series, but yet they've tweaked it a little bit here and there, and on the bridge did some tweaks and stuff. But I can see how that's going to really anger some fans, and others may think it looks, fantastic. So I love the look of these ships. I love the bridge of the Shenzhou, but I just know that it doesn't fit quite right with the cage, which I actually end up watching. Was it today or yesterday? I watched some of it anyway, just to kind of prep myself for it. And I feel like it will work. but they are vastly different.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way to get around that, because you just can't make a show that's, taking place 10 years before a show from 50 years ago happened and make it look like that thing in the 60s. And it would be stupid to even try, I feel. I just think, just embrace the technology that we have now and the marvelous things that it can do. And let's just realize that it's not about the ship, it's about the people. But each person has their own thing that they really, really are looking for in a Star Trek series. And to some people, maybe the ship design is a deal breaker. And if it is, I'm really sorry to hear that, because I think that there's so much more to come that really just doesn't have that much to do with actual ship design.
Well, I think the three of us are very forgiving and accepting of what has taken place in this series, but there's a lot of people out there too that say, well, it's not really that true to canon. The ships don't look exactly like they belong in that time period. The uniforms are different from what we've seen in the Cage, because this is taking place just 2 years after the Cage episode, which was in 2254, and this is in 2256. And so the uniforms are different. The bridge, the technology, we see the holographic imagery of, when they communicate with someone, that someone is actually standing there with them and interacting with the physical objects within that space and pointing to certain people as if they are on the bridge or in the ready room with them. So Patrick, is it going a bit too far? Do people have the right to complain that this doesn't quite fit right in that time period? Or is it just that we have to learn to accept that we have to change things?
Personally, I think you just have to kind of accept that things are going to change. They're going to try and keep it as close as possible. Like, they still use communicators instead of the comm badges. But for the most part, yeah, I don't want to watch a show. I mean, I don't mind watching TOS, but I don't want to watch TOS made today. It wouldn't work for me. It'd be a waste of resources by a network as well. The only thing that bothered me, and I mentioned this on the Babel conference earlier, the only thing that bothered me about all of these different changes was that when Sarek was talking in the hologram form, he sat on the edge of a desk. That just didn't make any sense. But other than that, I was fine with all the other pieces. And really, I very quickly looked past the fact that he sat on a desk, because what he was saying was more important than what he was doing at the moment.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because actually that was one thing that I liked. And the reason for that is I think that Sarek, wherever he was, is in a room where he did decide to lean on something, and the holographic imagery decided to adjust and put him on an object similar in the room and the desk, because there's a lot of flickering and it seems like it's adjusting as if like, oh, Sarek is leaning or sitting on something, and the hologram technology decided, oh, we'll put him on the desk, but that's not really where he was. I don't know. Maybe that's stretching it. I do see your point, because my initial reaction at first was, wait, how did he know that the desk is there? And he's not really sitting on the desk, but I think he was probably sitting on something else, and it just adjusted itself to fit that. I don't know. I'm very good at trying to make up a lot of excuses.
So, that's fine. I usually do the same. It was just a weird one for some reason.
Yeah, that is kind of a weird one, though. Brandi, what'd you think about him leaning on that desk?
I'll be honest with you, I did not even notice.
Oh, is that when one of your streams froze up on you?
Quite possibly, because I wasn't able to tell whether the holograms themselves, or holographs, or whatever you want to call them, were a little bit glitchy, or whether it was my stream being glitchy. But I think it was probably a combination of both, because it seems like the holographic imaging was just a little bit glitchy from time to time for them, which is probably their way of saying, this is not the final product. We're going to have a better way in the future for this kind of communication. But yeah, didn't even notice the leaning on the desk. So I probably will notice it when, and actually I know I will notice it now when I go back and watch it again, because I will watch it again. Hopefully tomorrow.
I'm sure you will.
You bring up that this might be their excuse for why the technology changes over time. I had wondered, maybe we'll get an answer later on. Is it that the technology is just kind of shaky, or is it that they were so close to that beacon that was caught? Because they kept using that as an excuse for a lot of things not working, being that within the the beacon for the Klingons. So maybe we just find out that you can be 10 feet away from each other and they don't work, or maybe we'll find out later that they work perfectly fine everywhere else in space but there.
Yeah, and it could be that I actually like that. I like that idea. As a matter of fact, it reminds me of some of the Star Trek Enterprise novels where they've addressed the, when the Romulans are able to remotely take control of other ships, it's because of some of the digital technology on the ships, and they realize to prevent Romulans or any other race from taking over the controls of a ship, they probably have to go a little more analog with some of the controls, and therefore explaining why in TOS there's more buttons than there are display screens or interactive screens, which of course now on the Shenzhou we see screens and not that many buttons. There are some buttons and stuff, but yeah, it could be something to that effect. Or holograms weren't used that much on other ships because they just didn't use them that much in the episodes that we saw, but maybe off to the side and other times they did. I don't know. See, there again, I'm making excuses.
Yeah, well, for me, it's not something I really need an explanation for. It's just like, I'm fine with it. If this is how we're doing it in this particular time period, okie dokie.
Okie dokie. Works for me. I love that you guys are like me. It's like, yeah, I'm good with it. I want to see something different. I don't want it always to be the same thing. It's like,
thank you.
Aren't we about seeking out new life and new civilizations? As fans, you think we want something new with Star Trek instead of being the same thing all the time.
Yeah, well, and I've said this before. Fans. Yeah, fans will do that because fans can just be really precious about the things that they love, and I totally get that. I really totally get that. But at the same time, I feel like if you love something, let it become something new, because just doing the same thing over and over again, that's not progress. That's actually doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. So let's not go there. Let's do something new and something different and enjoy it for what it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I love that they're trying to go in new directions. And what makes Star Trek for me isn't how much, technology played a role, and especially back in the 60s, but as we've gotten closer to their technologies, it plays less and less of a role for me of importance. Now I have a cell phone that does more than their communicator, let's be realistic. And so to me, that's not the important draw anymore. Now it's the talking about cultural issues and social issues that draws me to Star Trek.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I feel like we're going to see some of that. Definitely. I think we're going to see that more than we've seen in the recent movies. And that's not a knock at the Kelvin timeline movies. I actually do love those. And speaking of, I loved how some of the way they produced those movies and the special effects and the sounds and the production value were also an inspiration into this show. Obviously, I've read about that, and it's very much apparent, and I enjoy that. You guys did, because so far we're pretty much in agreement on most things.
Well, I don't have a problem with it. I think I saw on someone else's timeline someone complaining about the lens flare, and the person's response was, "Oh, you mean when the Klingon ship lit up and basically was brighter than anything else on their view screen? Yeah, there's gonna be a flare." That's the way light works.
I think we saw a flare on the Shenzhou, though.
We saw one or two little ones, bottom right-hand corner, left-hand corner. But
yeah,
they don't really, whatever. I mean, if that's the biggest problem with the show, we're doing pretty well.
Yeah, I didn't even notice, and I'm really sensitive to lens flares because they drive me crazy, but I didn't even notice. So either it was not even worth noticing for me, or it was a moment where the stream skipped or froze. Not really sure, but we'll see upon repeated viewings.
Repeated viewings. That's what I love about today. We have on demand and DVRs. We can watch this stuff over and over again. Well, I really want to touch on the characters. I think that's a big thing. And I see a good segue here. We have Dan Gunther at Kurtratz on Twitter. Oh, I know this guy. I do literary treks with him. Anyway. He says, a bit sad we didn't learn more about the Shenzhou officers other than Burnham, Saru, and Georgiou. Can't wait to meet the Discovery crew. Well, I just want to touch on something real quick. So I have an advanced copy of Star Trek Discovery, Desperate Hours by David Mack, which of course we will cover on Literary Treks coming up October 7th, whatever that day is, that Sunday, that second Sunday of October. I think we're going to have that episode out. But anyway, we get to know that crew better in the book of the Shenzhou. So if you want to know more about the crew and their names and stuff, check out that book. It's coming out actually tomorrow as of this live show and recording. So go check that out. But what do you guys think of, let's talk about our main character. We've got Michael Burnham, Patrick. She's the lead, but she's not the captain.
I think it's great. It's a change. It's not something they've ever done before, but it's something that'll make, because she's not the captain, I think it'll make all the other bridge crew, I'm assuming she eventually ends up back on the bridge. It'll make all of them more important than say they may have been in past series.
Yeah, that's a good point. I actually really, 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 really love Michael Burnham. And not just because Sonequa Martin Green does an amazing performance and is pleasing to look at, let's be honest. I don't know, she roped me in. She's at once emotional and logical and indignant and questioning and trusting. She's a person. She has conflicting emotions and conflicting logic and conflicting morals and all of these things. And yes, she mutinied. She did. And she took responsibility for it. But at the same time, I totally get why she did it. And I would have done the same thing in her place to try and save that ship, to save not only that ship, but the other ships that could have been destroyed and were destroyed because the Klingons took the "we come in peace" as their battle cry to attack.
But is that really what a Starfleet officer should do? Is she basically
Of course it's
the
not.
mutiny?
Of course it's not what a Starfleet officer should do. I am not saying that a Starfleet officer should mutiny. What I'm saying is that her motivation was not revenge. It was not really emotional. She was trying to save lives. Sometimes you can't save lives and obey the rules. And she made that decision to disobey the rules. Right or wrong, obviously Starfleet thought that was wrong. She was stripped of rank, sentenced to life in prison, and she accepted that. But it makes me wonder what would have happened if they had just given them the Vulcan hello. Oh, right, I know what would have happened. We wouldn't have had a series. Never mind.
Well, that's true. I've always wanted to see a series where the lead was an alien, because we've always had the lead being a captain and they're always human. And in this case, our lead is not a captain, which is, of course, a little different and interesting. Well, and I know Sisko was a commander for the first couple seasons, but he was still the leader, the commander of the station. But then also, she's not an alien, but she was raised on Vulcan. So in a sense, she is part Vulcan in the fact that she comes from that society. So she's not coming from an earthbound society. So that part of it is interesting to me. And the one thing I've picked up on Burnham, and I don't know if this was the intention, but I almost feel that she's the blend of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. She's got the logical Vulcan side of Spock. She's got the, breaking the rules and getting out there kind of attitude of Kirk. And then McCoy, like she, bickers with Saru and she's going to state her opinion. I almost feel like she's a blend of the three. I don't know if anybody else has picked up on that or thought that, but it occurred to me when I was taking a shower today, because that's when I think really well, is when I start taking showers.
Yeah, I totally can see that. And the thing about her, about having a main character as an alien, is that I feel like no matter what Star Trek series we're in, the main character is probably always going to be human, because that character is our avatar. That is the audience's avatar, the way in which we relate to the rest of that particular corner of the universe that is going to be explored in this series. And so they'll probably maybe someday we'll get to the point where we can have an alien main character and feel that same way, that they can be an avatar for our experiences. But maybe we haven't progressed far enough for that yet. I would love to see an alien as a main character. I just don't know if it will happen anytime soon. But I love your theory of the blend of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, because we've got the logic, we've got the cowboy diplomacy, and we've got the emotional side. And now I'm just going to think of her as the Holy Trinity, because that's what she is. She is three, but she is one, but she is three, but she is one. So yeah, that works. It works for me.
I think one of my favorite things about her character is the line where she's arguing with the admiral, and she says race and culture aren't the same. And she's the living embodiment of that statement. Mm-hmm. Her race is human, but her culture is most certainly not. Which is why she actually feels so attached to the captain, because that became like her surrogate human mother, I guess.
Yes.
And she feels a great attachment to her, which is what causes her to mutiny. So just a perfect way of explaining her character.
Yeah, and speaking of Captain Georgiou, what are your thoughts of her as captain? We touched a little bit about her at the beginning, but what about her relationship with Burnham, and also as commander of the ship? Would you like to see her? Of course, we're hitting spoilers on this, but of course, and she dies at the end of episode 2. But would you have liked to seen her continue on?
I think that we will continue to see her in flashbacks. I'm 99% certain of that. It's just a feeling, really. But I feel like we will see more flashbacks of her relationship with Michael, because they showed us the flashback of when she and Michael first meet. And I think there's going to be a lot more of that as we go through the series, especially with Michael dealing with what she did, dealing with Georgiou's death. And I'm a big Michelle Yeoh fan, so I really hope I'm right about that. But I feel that their relationship was very mother-daughter, because Georgiou was there to reintegrate Michael into humanity and to help her explore that side of herself, which she basically tried to shut off. Mm-hmm. And the thing about humans is that, yes, we can be very illogical and very emotional. However, suppressing that isn't the answer. We learn to work with that, and we learn how to balance when we should be logical, when we should be emotional. And it's a struggle, but we're the better for it, I think. So mother-daughter is definitely how I would classify their relationship.
I don't know if I'd go, I can see that. I wouldn't have put it mother and daughter, but definitely a mentor but yeah, you're right. I mean, it's like she's really trying to help her fit in among humans. She's grown up around Vulcans, and that's why Sarek brought her there, to give her an opportunity to really fit in with other humans and find that side of her. Patrick, what do you think of Captain Georgiou and her relationship with Burnham?
From what we saw of her, she seemed like the quintessential Starfleet captain. I mean, like she says at one point, I choose hope over whatever, anything else, basically, and Starfleet ideals. And the reason why I took you was because I believed you could become more human, and stuff all along those lines, which is very Starfleet to me. But I think we do need to see more flashbacks of her. But I am, and this is going to sound terrible, so don't get mad, I'm glad she died. I think that her death informs the character more than if she just left to the ship to go become a captain somewhere else. And then again, we'd have a captain as the lead again, so that would have defeated the purpose. So something had to happen along those lines. And I think the punishment was excessive. Life in prison over a single mutiny that didn't even work is a little high. But I think that because she said a few times it wasn't just about the ship. She kind of threw the ship in, that she was trying to save the ship, like as an afterthought. She kept saying, I was trying to save your life and the ship and everyone else here, but your life. No, it's your life. So she clearly has a greater attachment than just people who work on a ship together.
Yeah. Well, and I really don't want this to happen, but the fact that her body wasn't beamed back over to the Shinjo makes me wonder, is she really going to come back? Like the Klingons healed her and she's now a prisoner, or, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but, makes me wonder, was that done for a reason, not having her body beamed back? But I will say, so I'm looking at Twitter here, and Dan Gunther also mentioned that he feels that we'll see her in flashbacks. And I agree too. I think we will, especially since they put all that money into that bridge to build it.
Oh, yes, they really did. In fact, I watched a high-speed video of them building that bridge. Oh, my heavens, the work that went into that. It was unbelievable. And it was a long video, a really long video, sped up to like just, the highest speed you could probably go and still be watching a video. So yeah, they didn't build that for 2 episodes. I'm sure that we're going to be having flashbacks. 99% sure, as I said before. And as far as the whole body not coming back, I'm one of those people that I feel like if we don't have a body to bury, I can't say with 100% certainty that they're still dead, because soap operas taught me that, and science fiction.
Yeah.
Soap opera and science fiction.
Well, Mike Schindler, who is at Mumbles 3K. Hey, wait, I know that guy too. He says that holograms are like 3D. We're jumping back to holograms, and that they are new and popular at first, and then a few years later, they were just thought of as annoying. So maybe that's why they got rid of the holograms, is because they just thought they were annoying.
Works for me.
Especially if they're jumping around to sit on random furniture just because the guy sat down in real life.
I could see my mom saying, "Don't sit on the arm of the couch, even though you're a hologram."
I'm standing here looking that way, talking to you. Next thing I know, you're gone. How'd you get upstairs in my living room?
Yeah.
So,
not to mention, they would be a huge drain on resources. You would have to have hollow emitters everywhere on the ship for this to work the way they showed it there.
Well, I will give a little tiny bit of a spoiler. In the novel Desperate Hours, it is said that, the Shinjo is an older ship and the Enterprise is the new advanced ship. So maybe there's something, since we didn't see in the Enterprise, they didn't feel like they needed holograms because they have something that's more advanced with maybe the view screens. I don't know. I don't know. We'll find out someday, I'm sure. So I want to go back to Twitter real quick. Well, before we do that, Saru. I think he's the Spock or the Data or the Oda or whatever of this series. What are your thoughts on Saru, Brandi?
I really liked Saru. I wasn't sure I was going to. No, that's not true. I love Doug Jones and every freaking thing he does. So I'm like, Doug Jones, I'm in. It doesn't even matter what his performance is like, because I know it's going to be good. And I enjoyed him. I liked that he got to, use his own voice for once. That's great. So, but I want to know more about him. And I want to know how a race that is bred to be so unnaturally cautious could evolve to the point where they can be members of Starfleet and the Federation. I want to know more.
Mm-hmm.
So I liked him, but I want to know more. So they've teased me. Now give me something. Give me something.
Right. They're not going to give you all that up front, right? We're going to develop Saru as time goes on.
And that's fine. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'm actually very interested in how they develop him, because he was, like you said, he's bred to be overly cautious and to sense death. But he says that, and then you kind of realize, wow, he always senses death. Like, he's afraid of the toaster in the kitchen falling into the bathtub. But, I think when they develop him, one of the things that he said that really hit that I want to hear more about is, he said basically that his race on his planet was just nothing more than livestock. He didn't say it. It kind of read differently than every other line he had in the 2 shows. All the other shows kind of sounded whiny-ish, and kind of feeble-ish, and this was actually said powerfully. Like, it's just a matter of fact, and everyone knows it, that we're just livestock on our planet.
Yeah. Again, read Desperate Hours. You'll find out a little more. I'm going to just keep plugging that book. Because in some ways, I feel like I've seen like several episodes now. After reading the book, it's like, I've seen 2 episodes and then a book. I feel like I've gotten extra discovery. So, check it out. Was there something you were going to say, Brandi, about Saru?
I was just going to say he was trying to find a word that would explain to humans the way that his people are viewed on his home planet. And livestock may not be necessarily the perfect fit, but it was the best fit in the English language. And so it may not be exactly that kind of relationship because it is an alien species. So there's probably other nuances that we're not getting, but for just all intents and purposes to help them understand we're livestock. We're like livestock would be to you. So I just, there's probably more to it than that.
You're probably right. Just the way he delivered the line.
Yeah.
It was more important than what he was actually saying to me. It wasn't done in that kind of, like everything else was said because that race is overly cautious. It was all kind of said as kind of like, let's put our tails between our legs and run away. Where this thing was just delivered as, no, this is a fact. This is what it is on our planet, and that's what it is. And then Michael comes back with, oh yeah, we used to do that thousands of years ago. As if, cattle raising is done for on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with replicators.
Do they have replicators at that time?
We haven't seen those, have we?
I mean,
well, if this is taking place after the events of the series Star Trek Enterprise, then they would have replicators because they had replicators on NX-01.
Or they'd have a chef.
They did have a chef, but there were replicators too.
Right.
They just didn't use them, just like they just didn't use the transporter because they were afraid of it.
Yep. And maybe they didn't use holograms because they were afraid of those too on Enterprise.
It wouldn't surprise me in the least.
So we have Renee at Holbach R on Twitter. He says, hi guys, what are your thoughts on the tribunal scene at the end of episode 2? So that's where we see Burnham being told that she's being kicked out of Starfleet. I've heard some criticism about that scene. What are your thoughts, Patrick?
Other than the fact that I think the punishment well outdoes the crime, nothing about that scene bothered me. I mean, it felt like they were trying to make a point that she's going to be gone forever, and it's obviously going to be something massive that brings her out for the next episode. I think they did it perfectly. I just think, life imprisonment for a very, very failed attempt at a mutiny is a little harsh.
Well, I've heard some criticism though that you can't see the judges, their faces. They're in the dark. Did that bother anyone? I mean, my feeling is from a director standpoint, I think they wanted it to be the focus on Burnham and not have focus that there's other characters in here we haven't met.
Yeah, we don't need to know who the judges are because they were just there for that one scene and that's it. We don't need to know their backstory. We don't need to see their faces. We don't need to know anything about them. And as far as the punishment, I think that it wasn't just the mutiny that failed, but I think they blame her for the fact that they're now at war with the Klingons. And so they're probably thinking in their own narrow vision because they weren't there. They didn't know what happened. I mean, they can look at logs and stuff like that, but that's never the whole story. So they're probably thinking she not only mutinied, but her actions led to us being at war with the entire race of Klingons. So that's a pretty big deal. And yeah, that would explain why the sentence was so harsh, because I was actually not surprised by the sentence at all. So, and I thought that the scene was handled perfectly because the focus should have been on Michael. That's who we're looking at. That's who's going through this. She's our avatar. So I don't need to know anything about the judges.
Yeah, I'm the same way. It didn't bother me on that scene. I mean, I know it's kind of dark in that room, but there's a lot of dark spaces that I'm noticing in this show and the way it's shot. you know, I think we're trying to keep this to about an hour. I mean, if we
Yeah.
go over a little, that's okay. So we've got, you know, 6 more minutes left. And I've been kind of just leading us through some things. And there's so much to talk about. I mean, we could be here for another couple hours, in my opinion. But is there anything that the two of you want to touch on real quick that really stood out to you that you want to discuss on tonight's episode before we would close this out? So, Patrick, since you're the guest, I'll let you go first if you have any other things that you'd like to touch on.
One thing we didn't talk about yet, but I've noticed other people talking about is they didn't like the battle between all the ships. They felt that it was too video gamey and that it took weird shots that were close up and weird shots that were far away that didn't really make sense. They were either too close or too far, or camera seemed out of position. I have to say that I loved the battle with the ships. I felt that it created just enough confusion to feel like you were part of the battle. That a battle like that blows up at you, say the words, "We come in peace," and all of a sudden you start getting shot at, would be extremely confusing for all the commanders on all the ships, especially since the Federation hasn't been at war in quite a long time, and they weren't expecting a battle. They expected to be able to talk. That fact, I think, made that scene perfect for us to view it in that confusion.
I can see that. I didn't think of it being very video game like, but I can see where that opinion comes. I liked the ship battles. I guess my criticism would be I would have liked to have seen a lot more close-ups of all the different ships. I kept squinting, trying to take time. I'm going to go back and freeze frame things so I can see the ships better. But I was fine with the battle. What did you think, Brandi?
I was fine with the battle. I play a lot of video games, and I didn't find anything video gamey about it at all. I thought it felt like you were in the battle. Like you said, Patrick, there was a lot of confusing stuff going on because they didn't expect to suddenly be fired upon. And now all of these ships are involved, and there's all the Klingon ships, and there's all the Federation ships, and you're just trying to keep yourself alive is what you're trying to do. So I thought that actually it was really great. So I agree with you, Patrick. Well done.
Anything else you want to touch on, Patrick, before we ask Brandi?
I think we covered everything that I wanted to hit on in this. You know, like you said, we could go on for hours, but
right.
I think we hit the major points. And
okay, Brandi, what do you think? Anything else?
Well, one scene that I really enjoyed was Michael arguing with the computer to get out of her brig cell. And how the computer was saying, nope, sorry, it's not life-threatening. And so she starts using logic, because that's where her logic comes into play. Is she knows how to get around this computer by using logic so that the computer will do what she needs it to do so she can get out of that cell and not die in the horrible vacuum of space. And so I really enjoyed her back and forth with the computer as she's leading the computer into realizing, oh, okay, I'll do this for you. Here you go. I'm going to shoot you out and into that door. Thanks. Bye. So I just really enjoyed that, her application of logic.
Yeah, that scene really does stand out. I like to see more scenes like that with her because it really gives her something unique that we don't always see. It has that whole Starfleet reasoning and trying to go through something logical. I can see Spock doing that, but the fact that she's human and she's still, I feel like, finding herself among the crew and her career and what's right and what's wrong and where she needs to fit in. I really enjoy that about her character. I would also say that another character that was in this that I did not like is Admiral Anderson. I think he's an ass, and I'm glad he's dead. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I used a different word when we were watching it the first time, but ass works.
Well, Anderson and ass all begin with A.
Yes.
Not only, he just doesn't seem that bright either. I mean,
yeah.
You kind of like, who's his cousin that got him this far in life? I mean,
the way that I think of it is that he's like the CEO of a company who had to work his way up from the bottom, and yet he doesn't remember what it's like to be on the front line anymore. He's just too comfy cozy in his little admiralty. So I think that there's that disconnect that he just can't remember or doesn't want to remember what it's like to be the one out there facing a freaking huge sarcophagus ship.
Also, I don't think any of them know what it's like. That's one of the problems in this whole thing is they all are extreme lack of experience in war. And even though the Klingons have only been fighting amongst themselves, and you kind of bring it up that the guy whose name you remembered and I can't right now wasn't like on the council, so he wasn't even involved in those battles. He at least had the legends of all the battles to go off of and learn and kind of become a good Klingon with, where the Federation has just kind of been sitting pretty and roaming around space looking at stuff ever since, you would assume, since the Xindi, right? I mean, that would be the last time they were at war with anybody, and they didn't go to war in a huge battle. They were like, oh, Archer, go out there and save us, please. I mean, like, so they really haven't had a huge war ever.
Yeah, because they even mentioned they haven't really had much involvement with the Klingons in 100 years.
Some people thought they didn't exist anymore.
Yeah. So
his name is Takuvma.
There you go.
That should be your handle, Brandi.
I'm totally changing it. Forget Brandi 112. It's going to be Takuvma 12 now.
Well, okay, so I'm looking here because, I said about using Twitter if you have questions or comments, but there's a live chat going on YouTube, and I've been following that along too. And so we have Jude Funnyword saying Michelle is a war vet, isn't she?
I do not know for sure. I remember her line about saying that she had been through great loss in her life, but she chose to remain hopeful. So again, I'm going to have to rewatch the episodes when they're not skipping and freezing on me. So it is quite possible, but I don't know. Bruce, do you have any more information from the new book coming out tomorrow?
I think, again, it's lightly touched on. I think it is. And when we say Michelle, we're actually talking about Michelle Yeoh's character.
Yeah.
Captain Shinju.
She was. Now that someone mentioned it, she does bring up that she was a warrior on the front lines at one point. And they said, that's the captain in you talking, or the warrior in you talking. They make a reference to that. But what war? Are they going to give us that? Because they really also go out of their way to point out that they've been in great peace for a long time. So those two ideas kind of conflict with each other.
Yeah, and I don't recall anything in the novel that specifies the war. So that I don't think is revealed, but maybe that's going to be the next series, because we'll just keep making prequels.
Yeah, well, it's hard to say, because perhaps the war or the battles that she was involved in were not on a Starfleet level. They could have happened before she was in Starfleet. We don't know. So I'm really not sure what to think about that, but I am certain we'll find out one way or the other.
Yep. Well, I think that about wraps it up. I want to kind of keep going, or even just watch the episode. But this is our live reactions within 24 hours of seeing them. We're going to do this every Monday evening at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific time. So check us out here on YouTube. If you're listening to this as a recording, as a podcast, again, tune in live Monday evenings, and you can either tweet to us, or, like I said, the YouTube chat works also, and you can engage with us on the topics and such. And it's been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to doing more of these and continuing this journey for the next 13 episodes this season.
Oh, I'm so excited. I can hardly stand it. Can you tell I'm excited? I'm excited.
I'm excited. So how would you rate this? I mean, I think we pretty much said we all love it, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I think this was the best pilot episode of a Star Trek series to date. I mean, in my personal opinion, that's how I feel.
I'm almost with you, but I have to give it some more time, because I notice sometimes when I see something new, then I think, oh my gosh, this is my favorite. And then later I realize, well, maybe not. But I did rewatch Broken Bow Enterprise on Sunday to get ready for it. But I would say, yeah, maybe it's the best or second best. I'm not sure yet. I need more time to think through that. Brandi, do you have an opinion if you think it's the best pilot so far?
I have a really hard time picking favorites in anything. In fact, if you were to ask me what my favorite Star Trek series is, I would tell you all of them, because I love each and every one of them for all of the different things that they bring to Star Trek. So for me to say it's the best pilot, but I love them all. So it's
Yeah,
hard
I
for
know.
me to
Me
say.
too.
It's really, let's just put it this way, it's really, really high up there. It's tied.
It's high up
It's
there.
tied for first with all the others.
That's all that matters. That's all that matters.
Right.
Although I'm gonna say Emissary Deep Space Nine is probably my favorite, and this is second favorite. Maybe that's what I'll go with. But anyway, that it changes like the wind. It could
That's
change
fair.
tomorrow. I'll have a
That's
totally
fair.
different opinion on that. But Encounter of Farpoint will never be number one on my list. So that I remember watching when it premiered, and it yeah. So Patrick, if people want to follow you online, where can they find you?
I'm always in the Babel conference, so they can find me at Twitter at MagicDrop5. It's one word. The 5 is a number, not letters. And like I said, I'm always on the Babel conference chatting with people and doing things like that. And I will be on Warp 5 again soon. So listen for the season 3 retrospect and you'll hear me.
Great. Awesome. Brandi, where can we find you?
You can find me in many places, but I think I better warn you that you're in trouble with Amy now for that comment about Encounter at Farpoint.
I'm always in trouble with Amy, so this is nothing new.
Anyway, you can find me lurking on the Babel conference a lot of the time, and I also am on Twitter as Brandywine12, maybe soon to be Takuvna12, you don't know. And I also do another podcast that is not part of Trek FM because it's too wide and broad for that, but it's called the Dark Corner Podcast, which you can find on strangeanddeadly.com. And we basically look at pop culture through the lens that's a bit darker, very, very dark, really. And there's a lot of swearing, so not for all audiences.
So it's like the Shenzhou Bridge. It's a little darker than what we've seen of some other bridges.
Yes, that's a perfect analogy. Thank you.
Well, you can find me online. I'm on Twitter at Admiral_Rex, and you can find me here on Trek FM on Literary Treks with that one guy who was tweeting us this evening, Dan Gunther. And you can also find me on a different network, the Star Wars Report at starwarsreport.com, talking, of course, Star Wars. And of course, I'm always in the Babel conference. So I want to thank you, Patrick, for joining us. And Brandi, I guess I'll talk to you next week. And I thank everyone for participating. And hey, join us next time and send us more tweets and participate in the live chat on YouTube. And we'd like to engage with you. So thanks a lot and live long and prosper.